What's up, guys? Matt Brown from the LSR Podcast. Thanks for joining me and Dustin and Adam right here on the channel each and every week. And while you're here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and let us know in the comments if there's anything you'd like us to tackle in a future episode. But without further ado, Adam, this is something we have talked about a couple of different times now, which is quite unfortunate. We have yet another situation where we are dealing with a sportsbook error here that is obviously a sportsbook error. Sports bettors look to find edges against sportsbooks, so they found this error, and here we go. They do not want to pay out.
Don't you think the word palp ultimately makes this sound so much nicer than what it really is, which is bad line, no payment? Because that's kind of where we are right here. FanDuel Sportsbook, again, is going through this. If you remember their situation with the Denver Broncos a couple of years back made headlines throughout the nation. Now what we're talking about is a number of soccer bets over a period of a few days where a bad line was exploited. And how do you know it was a bad line? Because it's rare that you see a 5-goal line listed in soccer. This story was first reported by ESPN's David Purdom. I want to give him the credit for having that out first. But, you know, ultimately, this is being investigated by both the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. It's being investigated in Indiana as well, although Indiana law did allow FanDuel to void out those bets and repay the wagers. Part of what's at stake here, and part of the credibility of the U.S. market, is on the line with what happens with these bets, because in part, the question is, why has FanDuel not handed back at least the original bet to this point? One of the bettors said that his $10,000 is essentially being held in escrow at the moment. He hasn't been able to get that money back. So if the argument for the legal regulated market is that your money is safe, well, right now, if I have $10,000 that is under investigation, I don't feel like my money is very safe if I can't access it. So still under investigation in New Jersey, waiting to see what happens. The word that we have is that, you know, FanDuel, if they end up having to pay it out, they're prepared to pay it out, but they kind of want to see where the precedent goes here with the regulators.
So, Dustin, this is something we have talked about a couple of different times. This is not the first time that this has happened. This isn't the first time it's happened with FanDuel, actually, whenever we look at these, you know, errors within the sports book and whatnot. I mean, I guess the question becomes, and I think it's a fair question. There are going to be a lot of people out there who are saying, well, I mean, what the hell? How are these sports books getting a free roll in stuff like this, where had this guy lost this bet, it probably just would have been processed like normal and nothing would have come of it. However, when they lose the bet, they come in and they say, yeah, you know what? We're not going to pay out this bet. So it's a free roll for the sports book. I mean, us as advocates of legalized sports betting here in the United States, it's a pretty tough thing for us to defend when it's kind of giving the sports book a free roll on some of these bets.
Absolutely. But well, first, let's say if you were betting an MLS game at plus 5 goals and you lost, that's a pretty bad beat. None of us are huge soccer experts, but I think we can identify a 5-goal spread as pretty favorable to the bettor. So obviously those bets came in. Yeah, I mean, here's the big problem is on the Palps is this is how it's gone on in UK, especially for a while, that you get some dispensation as a bookmaker because you're putting up all these lines, and sometimes mistakes are going to happen. That's understandable. But this one, like at least one of these wagers, again, from our friend David Purdom, said somebody placed a physical bet at the Meadowlands. The teller got supervisor approval for the bet, and the bet still goes out. And as you guys know, in Nevada and Vegas, when that happens, bets go out as written. So it's hard to look at this and be sympathetic to the books and FanDuel here, because they clearly messed up. They're not being held accountable for that action. And for me, again, with Adam, with where we say we're trying to build a good U.S. regulated sports betting market. Having mistakes like this and having people look at this and not trust a sports book like FanDuel when they make an error like this and not getting paid out, and then not having even their original bet back. That's the kind of thing that doesn't engender a lot of people to be thinking this is better than the offshore market. So that's where I come from. I think we need to always be thinking of the larger picture of this is still a growing thing. It's still a new thing. Customers need to feel like they're getting the correct deal, and that's obviously not what's happening when we see a palp, even though there, in the grand scheme of things, there have not been that many examples of this in the U.S. yet.
So, Adam, I guess the question herein lies, what do we do about this? I mean, because if the sports books are able to walk away scot-free, right? And if they are not held accountable for stuff like this, what is the incentive for them to try to be better? What's the incentive for them to try to not make things like this happen? It feels like to me there needs to be some sort of penalty whether they have to pay out whatever, 30% of the bet or 50% of the bet or whatever it might be, some sort of something that is a deterrent so that these things like quit happening, right? Because if at the end of the day that you're not going to face really any repercussions for these things, then why would they try to be better?
That's the nail on the head here, Matt. And I think the Indiana situation is going to be the one to watch when it comes to that, because the rules are set up in Indiana for the book to be able to void a bet in the case of an obvious error and refund that money. Now, what the folks at the Indiana Gaming Commission said was, yes, they're allowed to do that. And they did do that in Indiana. But they said there's going to be a further review and there could be potential discipline against FanDuel Sportsbook. And I think that's what needs to be made very clear to everyone involved in this, right? That everyone needs to know what the consequence is. If you're going to allow the bets to be voided, okay, then that's what's on the table. I'm not the regulator and I can't change that rule. It doesn't do much to engender confidence in the legal market, but what you can do to engender confidence is to say, even though this is the rule, this book is still subject to potential discipline above and beyond whatever happened. So, ultimately what happened with the FanDuel situation, they tried to hold off, I should say with the FanDuel Broncos situation, they tried to hold off. They ultimately paid it out. They ultimately put another $80,000 of free roll into it to try to win some goodwill back. What Dustin said is exactly the point. In a vacuum, you can try to litigate these things and say who's right and what's right. That's not where we are right now. This is year number 3 of the legal regulated market. It needs to tilt toward the bettors and gaining confidence for them in this market.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on this. I mean, it is a situation where, I do bet a lot. I am a sports bettor and I look at this and anyone that's listening to this podcast knows that I look at things from the book side of it as well. I understand that they're a business. I understand they're trying to make money. I'm not the guy who's saying they owe me anything. I'm not that guy. There are a lot of those voices in the industry. I'm not one of them. However, stuff like this and the fact that it continues to happen is really frustrating for where we're sitting, where we're trying to do what we're advocating for. And if there isn't some sort of penalty, I guess I just look at this and I shrug, because I say, hey, look, if they know they're going to be able to get away with this time and time again, at what point do they decide, we really should try to make sure that this stuff doesn't go on? And instead, you're able to walk. I don't know. Dustin, should they pay the guy his damn bet or what? I mean, like, what do we think?
I mean, when this happened back in 2018, I felt very adamant about it. I guess I've probably gone a little bit like, okay, mistakes happen, but you don't have to pay maybe every bet back. But with Adam, where you have to have consequences for actions, there can't be I don't think throwing your hands up, well, we made a mistake, what can you do? We're a sports book. Yeah, there has to be, again, we have to be better right now in the U.S. market as everything's going on. So, yeah, I think they should. I mean, these are not massive bets. I think FanDuel's probably worried as it expands about the ramifications of always paying these out. If there's, God forbid, some huge palp that happens on a really big betting market, then you're talking, real money at some point. I guess that's the concern when you think about it. But at least from a regulatory standpoint, there has to be at least some sort of penalty, even if it's a hand slap. But you can't just say every time, well, what can we do? We made a mistake. That shouldn't happen.
If there's an algorithm involved, if it's a live betting type thing, I maybe have a little bit more sympathy or something like that. But when it's like an over the counter and things are getting approved,
the supervisor.
Yeah, I know. It's like when things are over the counter and things are getting approved and whatnot, it blows my mind, right? Like I don't know. So we'll see how this all plays out. Obviously, we will keep you guys updated as to how it goes here. Guys, as a reminder, the full version of this podcast can be found over at LegalSportsReport.com, as can the written breakdown of every topic we talk about on the show each and every week. Thanks for watching.